Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's Libsyn ads.com today.
You're listening to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast, the show that proves no one stumbles upon success ever, with your host, Lou Need. Every Mondays and Thursdays, we deliver cold hard evidence behind the power of a robust morning routine. Get ready to be transformed by the renewal of your mind.
Hello, morning enthusiasts. Welcome to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lou Need, and today we have the honor of introducing a very special guest to the show, Reid Kirchenbauer. He is a managing partner at Invest Asia and a co-star alongside Jim Carrey's 2001 hit film, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And for over a decade, he has searched Asia for some of the world's top performing investments. And so now he directs their global research and day-to-day operations and focusing on just like how to preserve clients' wealth and actually show them how to continue to grow and maintain it. So with no further ado, Reid, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Looney. It's great to be here.
Yes. Tell us about, started out as an actor, right? I saw the movie How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and now you are in investment. So let's talk about your acting career first and then the transition to this.
Yes. Well, when I was very young, 5, 6, 7, 8, I lived in LA with my parents, and I did some television commercial work mostly. I did about 10 nationally aired TV commercials for Sears, Toys R Us, companies like that. The main thing, I guess, that I was in that most people would know is The Grinch Who Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey, the 2000 version. And I was in a classroom flashback scene about 30 minutes in where all of the kids, all of the main characters in the movie at a young age. And the Grinch has a beard and we all point and laugh at him. So I was one of those kids. Fast forward few years later, we had moved to Austin, Texas at the time. And I was, it's kind of hard to land an acting gig in Texas and most places in the US. So by then I'd kind of stopped that whole career. And I was very interested in the stock market, though. Of course, I was, still a kid. I was 12, 13, 14, and I could not actually trade stocks under my own name. So I was using my parents' brokerage account.
Really?
And yes, and I didn't get rich off of it, but I was doing, pretty good for a teenager. And I started traveling when I turned 18, and practically the day after I turned 18, I moved out to Southeast Asia, went to university here where I am now in Thailand. And now I manage a consulting service and investasian.com.
Nice. Yeah. So it's always been ingrained in you, the whole space of investing in the stock market. That has always been a passion for you. It sounds like acting just so happened that you were in LA. This is what happened when you're in LA and grew up in that scene. And now you've now solely just doing that, growing that.
Yes. And it's kind of strange because when you're a kid and you're making, some amount of money, the government, or they usually keep it in a trust fund or let your parents hold it until you're an adult, unless you invest it. So I was, a young version of me was looking at things and saying, if I invest the money, I can buy even more, toys or video games or whatever I wanted at the time. So that kind of led me to naturally be interested in business and the investment world, and things kind of took off from there.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Now, why Thailand and Asia? Because that's a very niche market, right? You got all the places in the world you could land. I know you went there for school, but you decide to stay, and now business is around that location.
Yes. I first came here as a tourist with my family when I was 16, 17. The first country I visited was Thailand. And I was in high school at the time. I was I forget whether I was a senior or a junior at the time, but I came here and I saw for the first time how an emerging market, an emerging economy looks like, and just the natural trend of just construction all over the place and a middle class that didn't exist 20 years ago. And I thought, well, not only would it be interesting to see how business works in this part of the world, but also I thought it would be a good place to spend 4 years. So I thought, well, I'm going to fly out to Thailand, and nobody else in my graduating class did that. We lived in Austin at the time, so everyone was going to UT, University of Texas. But I flew out here and have graduated with a finance degree and have basically been here since.
Okay, and you help your clients, diversify their investment holding right into high growth markets, and that's one of the 3 steps that you believe is a better way to improve your portfolio. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yes. When a lot of people invest, like, for example, if you buy a single stock, a lot of people, professional investors or investors in general, would think, well, that's too risky. You would never buy a single stock. What if the company goes bankrupt and it goes to zero? But what fewer people ask, I should say, is, well, why would you only invest in a single country? And what I suggest for people who already have some amount of investment in the US, whether it be real estate or stocks, is to look overseas into different markets outside of the US. And that is very useful as a diversification tool in some ways. It gets you invested in other currencies outside the US dollar. It helps you it's just generally great for diversification. There's higher growth rates in part of the world. Just for example, I do a lot of real estate in Southeast Asia, and there's people moving in from rural areas into the cities. And there's Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, for example, where I buy some real estate. The population's 3 million right now and is expected to be 5 million by the end of 2030. So that naturally creates demand for real estate, and I think is a good way to invest. It's based on demographic trends more so than the whims of the stock market, so to speak.
Yeah, and you kind of do a lot of data analytics behind that, right? Finding that research, kind of forecasting what the growth is going to be in that individual market. And I know you talk about Cambodia and actually the Philippines, that, the average age is 26. And so it really is prime place for properties because, like, as you mentioned, people are moving in. And so you're saying that because of the certain demographics, like, it doesn't matter which direction the market goes.
Yes, that's the way I see it. And sometimes these things take, 10, 15, 20 years to play out. But once demographics are set in motion, it's kind of hard for things to change. Recessions come and go. But when you see, for example, as you said, an average age of 25 in places like the Philippines, that's a young, educated, often English-speaking workforce that I think is in a very good place for the 21st century.
Yeah. It's good to know. And 2 of the other steps that you believe will improve the portfolio is cash flow and then emerging frontiers. Tell us about emerging frontiers.
Yes. And when I say emerging frontiers, these are places that I especially like for diversification, places that are up and coming in the world, places with the demographic trends that we were speaking about, places with a lot of foreign investment, manufacturing, because a lot of manufacturing is moving out of China into elsewhere in the world, oftentimes nearby in Asia. But these countries, I think, are very resilient just because of those trends, whether it be demographics or expanding foreign investment. So some of the countries I like are Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines, Cambodia. These are all countries where if you invest, you kind of get away from the system, which many of us are reliant on. If we are, for example, British, if we're investing, anyone who's in a developed economy, whether it be the US, the UK, Australia, anywhere.
Let's talk about the venture capitalists. How the best ways to go to find a venture capitalist?
Yes, and venture capital. I guess, as is the case with many investments in Southeast Asia, it's difficult to find a lot of the opportunities if you don't have some sort of on the ground presence, if you don't, at the very least, take a trip over here. And that, of course, takes time. It's expensive to buy a plane ticket and book a hotel and all of that. And these are countries where there's a lot of opportunity, but there's not many people taking advantage of the opportunities just because there's such a high barrier to entry.
Yeah.
So with regards to looking for venture capital, there's venture VC funds from all over the world that have people in Vietnam who've set up branch offices, Vietnam or anywhere, I suppose, and are looking at startup companies with a lot of opportunities. A lot of the time, what a startup company will do in an emerging market, like, for example, if a startup in Vietnam wants to become successful, they'll take what worked in the US or Europe 5 to 10 years ago and run with that, translate it, and sell it to their local population. So, for example, Audible, audiobooks become very popular in the US and elsewhere in the past decade. There's now local companies in Vietnam, Indonesia, and they essentially do the same thing that Audible or any of these audiobook companies do in the US or Europe, but they're selling to their population of 70, sometimes as many as 200 million people. So there's a lot of opportunity in the VC space and with companies in Asia in general.
Yeah, it's just being on ground and actually showcasing what is it that you do. And it's okay to do that, right? Just taking the idea and in a different time and kind of replicate, rinse and repeat.
Yes, just as long as you aren't, infringing on any trademark or there's if you take a company and you name it Audible, then there's going to be a problem. But if you take what they did and implement it elsewhere, then that's just fine.
Yeah. Reid, tell us about some of the success habits that you have put in place to help you do what you do. How do you get up, dress up, and show up? What's your morning routine like?
Oh, well, the first thing is I wake up. I don't check my phone in the morning or to check at least for the first hour after I wake up. I take a bath, get ready, try to read some news without checking my email or anything like that. And I drink a lot of green tea to get myself started because I take a long time to get going. So I drink about 3 bottles of this. I'm not sure if we're on video or not, but it's green tea, Japanese. I drink about 3 bottles of it every day. And the caffeine, I think, is good for me at least. And that's kind of how I get started in the day.
Yeah, do not touch your phone first thing in the morning is so crucial. What do you find that happens when you pick up your phone to, start checking your emails before you actually give your time to kind of warm up to the day, spend that time you need?
Oh, depending on what's on there. If I, just roll out of bed, check my phone. If there's nothing on there, then which is rare nowadays, then I guess it puts me at ease. But if there's something important, then I can't do anything else, and it kind of messes me up a bit.
Yeah, it's almost like the agenda, somebody else's agenda is for you. It takes over where you kind of now have to deal with it or put that fire out versus spending that quality time to kind of ease into the day. You will run into it with force.
Exactly.
Per se. Yeah. So you're saying you stimulate the mind, you're watching the news, making sure you're up to date. Hydrating first thing in the morning is cool too. Tell us, where can we find you? How can we connect with you?
Yes, my website is investasian.com, and that's the best way to get in touch with me. There's over 200 articles on there, more are being updated constantly, and that's where our services are as well.
Perfect. Now that you've been in Thailand, I imagine for like over 2 decades now, have you picked up on the language?
Yes, it's I'm not quite fluent. I want to say I'm like 90% of the way there. So I'm conversational, borderline fluent, but getting to that level is hard. It's the last 10%, which is, I think, the most difficult.
That's pretty awesome. That's great. All right. Tell us one of your favorite quotes as we wrap up.
One of my favorite quotes. Oh, that's a difficult one. I wasn't prepared for quotes.
Even your own around the investment and investing realm.
Well, I would say that here's one. Half of success is showing up. Half of success is being there and showing up. I'm not sure who that's attributable to, but it's a quote from somebody, and I've always liked that because I think it's true. It's many opportunities are out there, and you're never really sure what you'll find. But if you one thing often leads to another, and if you don't present yourself with those opportunities in the first place, then that can be difficult.
You gotta show up. I like it. First sign of success. First 50% of it is showing up. Then you're present for the opportunity. I like it. Just like our logo here at BMR, get up, dress up, and show up. Make sure you show up your best self. Thank you so much, Reid, for sharing and coming on today.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, morning enthusiasts, that's it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in. If you love the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast, we'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes or Google Play. While you're at it, tell a friend about the show. Be sure to visit bestmorningroutineever.com and our Facebook group to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic free bonus content. Until next time,